Hello, 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 everyone. Hello and welcome back. Glad you could join us. Love doing these author panels, and I've got a great one here with you today. In fact, we've got some new faces. This is always exciting for me. Let me formally introduce this week's panel. You've got a great book idea. You know your content is strong, your message matters, and you're confident people will benefit from it. So you write the book, publish it, and wait. And wait. Many entrepreneurial authors fall into the build it and they will come mindset. They believe that if the book is good enough, readers will find it, share it, and create momentum on their behalf. But that's just not how it works. Books do not create visibility on their own. They need a strategy behind them, a plan to reach the right readers, engage your network, and create conversations that lead to opportunities. So before you start writing, it's important to think about how your book will actually get into people's hands and how it will connect back to your business. That's where the Author ROI Lab comes in. It helps entrepreneurs think strategically about their book before they invest months of effort so they can create something that not only gets written, but also drives real results. If you want to make sure your book doesn't sit quietly after it's published, visit booklaunchbrainstorm.com and schedule a complimentary 30-minute brainstorming session. And now it's my pleasure to introduce our guests. Angie Callen wrote Scary Good, Discovering Life Beyond the Sunday Scaries, an empowering guide that helps professionals move beyond burnout and anxiety to build careers and lives that feel aligned, fulfilling, and sustainable. Renee Rubin Ross wrote Inclusive Strategic Planning for Nonprofits, a 5-step process to expand energy, alignment, and opportunity, a practical guide that helps nonprofit leaders engage stakeholders, align priorities, and create strategic plans that are both inclusive and actionable. Please join me in welcoming Angie and Renee. Angie, I'm going to kick this off with you. Welcome to the show. Tell us a little bit about who you wrote your book for, who you have in mind as you were writing it.
The average American experiences the Sunday scaries 36 times a year. And if you would like to do quick math with the former engineer over here, there are only 52 weeks out of the year. So by the time you take out Monday holidays and vacations, pretty much the average American experiences the Sunday scaries every single week. And if you don't know what the Sunday scaries are, it is Sunday night anxiety. It is allowing Mondays to ruin your Sundays or otherwise giving up precious time being present to the things and the people you love on the weekends because the weekday starts to creep in. And I believe that there is a better way to live and that the mediocrity that the Sunday scaries represent is something that we all need to be aware of and even ditch for something more intentional and design over default.
Did you have a particular industry or level of an organization in mind when you were writing this book? Is it, geared more towards senior execs, or is this feeling more by the people who are in the front line, entry level? Like what do you think is happening there?
It's pretty industry agnostic. However, I think there's a human level of commonality there. And it tends to be that kind of mid-career, mid-aged person that is probably somewhere between 37 and 50. So old millennial, young Gen X, who was likely raised and entered the workforce after going to school and following that traditional career path expectation of you're going to go to school, you're going to do the thing, and you're going to do that thing for your whole career. And the society and the workforce changed shortly after many of us, I am one of the people who falls into that category, entered the workforce, and there's way more possibilities now. And what I'm finding is that humans reach that midpoint and they start going, wait, do I want to do the same thing that I've done for the last 20 years for the next 20 years? And they start questioning things. And that is kind of what the Sunday scaries are flag is this idea of like something is misaligned. I'm going to go find what does align in an intentional way.
So interesting, because quarter life crisis was a big deal when I was turning mid-20s. And there was a book on the topic and everyone was talking about it. It was all about having too many possibilities. Here we are 25 years later. Oh my gosh, it's happening again. Hey, Renee, let's bring you into the conversation. Who did you have in mind when you're writing your book? And welcome.
Yes, great to be here. Thank you, Robbie. So I have been blogging for a while about our consulting work, leading strategic planning alongside nonprofit leaders in Northern California and around the United States. So we have over 150 blog posts. And I thought, okay, I could write a book. I was getting all these questions from our clients and our potential clients about our work. And I thought, okay, I'm just going to write this down, make it into a book. And what happened was I had a bunch of beta readers who were like 30 people who read the manuscript and said, this is interesting, but at this point, it's actually too promotional. And could you transform this into something that people can use on their own? And I was like, oh, okay, well, that makes sense. I didn't think about it because I was just kind of writing it all down. But yeah, I mean, if this is only going to be for potential clients of the Ross Collective, we're not talking a lot. I'm not going to sell a lot of books. But if it becomes it, I changed it in, as I was going along into something where nonprofit leaders could DIY this process and build an inclusive process. And I can explain more about what I mean by that, but on their own. So this really is for people who are running a nonprofit, for board leaders. And this is, nonprofits. There are thousands of nonprofits, and as well as foundations and government entities. This is really about how do you design and lead an inclusive process.
This discovery you had as you were sharing about this feedback. 30 beta readers is a lot. My eyes popped out of my head when you said that, only because they're not like all going to do it, and they're not going to all do it like super detailed. But I'm going to suggest for people listening, they probably want to max out at 12. 3 to 6 might be fine if you pick the right.
And by the way, people. there were multiple rounds of beta reading. So I had an initial draft. I got some feedback. Actually, the first round was maybe like 4 or 5.
Okay. Then, so you started there.
Yeah. And then I, expanded it. And the thing, I mean, one of the things that was interesting, what we know in our consulting work, that people learn in different ways, people process it. We designed for that. And that's what happened in the beta reading too. Is like some people wanted to know, what are all the steps to the strategic planning retreat, which is like, do I need to put that in my book? Okay, I guess I do, because people, what do we need to think about ahead of time? What do we need to send out to participants? To me, that stuff is like just kind of already on repeat in our consulting work. But people want, if you want creating a step-by-step guide, people really want that level of detail. So yeah.
I love this because if you provide people enough information, this is also the way I design my books. I say that I describe the apple in the book. I don't give you the apple. So an example for my last book, Launch Your Book, An Entrepreneur's Guide to Reviews of Drive Revenue, I gave them exactly what to put in the Google form that people would fill out in order to sign up for the launch team. I gave them the text for the invitation email. I gave them the text for the welcome email, like what would be in it. But there are 14 different emails, and there are 2 or 3 variations of every one of them. So, you're not getting all of the steps, but you're going to get enough, and people have followed them. And I think your point also that we're not just trying to speak to the small audience of the people who really are going to hire us. We're trying to broaden the message. Angie, it sounds like this book really was tied back to the work that you're doing. How did you think about this question of like what to put in the book, how to frame the book, how to help the book be a part of the conversation and the pipeline building?
Yeah, and I'll pick up a couple breadcrumbs here because I used How to Launch Your Book and found it very, very helpful as that kind of like, here's the roadmap. Yes.
Yay.
Yes.
Me too.
And I've recommended it to like dozens of people since then because here's the roadmap. I have the ability to iterate from that, right? So I have the ability to take one apple, turn it green, turn it right, and all of those other things. And Renee, I just anecdotally have to tell you, I appreciate what you're doing because my pathway from engineering into entrepreneurship was via nonprofit executive leadership. And so I appreciate what you're giving to people and just kind of commonalities here. And like you, Scary Good is almost a content anthology in a way. And it came from a mix of 2 things. I have been working on a book for like 5 years. And so for any of you out there who are like, I want to write a book, it's not necessarily a fast thing. Or it might be slow and then all of a sudden fast, which is what happened to me because I had been writing this book that was essentially a memoir. And I'm like, no one knows who Angie Callen is and no one's going to read her memoir. But I had this like 20, 30,000 words of just hashed out chronology, but I couldn't quite figure out literally what the cover was until life smacked me in the face and said, Angie, you've been writing a column for 4 years called Combating the Sunday Scaries. And when I took those common themes, like you said, Renee, and I massaged them together and teased out like the 12 things that I talk about all the time, lo and behold, aren't we shocked that it married very perfectly into the chronology of life that I've experienced for the last 20 years. And so I was able to kind of create what is a guide based in somebody's real human experience. And it's resonated because it isn't necessarily a framework, but more of an inspiration with some actions that you can take to just get yourself moving forward.
There's teaching memoir is one phrase, and narrative nonfiction is a variation on that. And I've been thinking about this a lot because if you can pull your story out and there's still lessons, then it's narrative nonfiction. It sounds like your book has that scaffolding, Angie, like where you have, you've really thought through. You're saying it's not a framework, but I'm guessing there is a bit of a framework in there.
Well, I'm a former engineer who loves people. There's always a framework.
Yeah, there's a framework. And then the stories kind of fill that out and help people make sense of it. And I think that to me is like usually the kind of book I enjoy reading because like brings the story, brings the theory or the strategy to life. Renee, pop back in here.
Yeah. I just wanted to say, I think you brought something up about writing a book, which is, as you're writing, it's really common to think, am I putting too much in the book? Am I giving away too much valuable content? I mean, I went through that. I was like, well, if I write this all down, am I not going to have anything left? But it doesn't really work that way. I mean, I think that first of all, each are in the work that we do. It is, I could write it all down and then some new variations emerge and people actually continue to need help and sometimes just want that personal touch. So it's, I actually was like, all right, I did many years ago worked with someone who was like, we can't share our intellectual property. People are going to steal it. Like, that's just not the way that I work. I really think like ideas, what we're trying to do, what I'm trying to do is get this idea out into the world, which is people's perspectives matter. And that is the core idea of the book. People's perspectives matter, and people need to be able to weigh in on their organizations, their lives, their communities, right? And so I'm committed to getting that idea out there. And yes, and
awesome.
Yeah.
I just want to say both of you a moment ago shared that you would use my book, Launch Your Book, to help with the launch of your books. I'm hearing that more and more, and I love it. And you would think I'm like, oh, but you didn't hire me. But no, instead, you're referring me left and right. And one of the best video testimonials I've gotten wasn't from a person who hired me. I love those too. It was someone who had met with me, wanted to work with me, but she'd already invested with someone who wasn't a good fit. There was no more money left in the coffer. So she was going to just follow my process. Got great results, got 78 reviews, really, just understood the plan, worked the plan, and then got on air with me and recorded a video that talked about both her success and how much work it was and how her next book, she's just going to hire me from the start. So it's like the best possible testimonial. It's like, Robbie's process works. I was able to follow it on my own, and I'm never going to do that again. I'm going to just have him do it. Because it is a lot. And part of what happens when you read a book like ours is that it awakens people to the bigger issue, and that makes them more aware of that and makes them more want to work with you. Angie, this is your first book. Is that right?
This is my first book. And by the way, I'm a little bit like over here because I agree with the idea. I was actually having this conversation with a business owner yesterday who I'm working with, and they had that idea of like, well, if I give all my stuff away, how am I going to make money? And there is an entrepreneurial saying that you give your best information away for free and you sell the implementation. That's exactly what we're all talking about. So from an entrepreneurial perspective, I completely agree with that. Now, my book doesn't necessarily even it gives my best inspiration and some of my best tips away, but it really doesn't even come close to being like an implementable thing. It's a little bit more of that word empower that you use in the description, to empower people to think about life differently and take some sort of action. And so I never really this was not a battle I had to deal with in this particular piece of content. But I write lots and lots of content. Just this was the first book size version of it.
What I'll say is that there are different kinds of books. And what your book sounds like, it still works in the sense of it helps people start to think about this problem differently and see that there are other ways possibly forward. You're not writing a prescriptive book about one way forward. It's like if you were to write a book about sleeping better, you cannot solve everyone's problems. You could give some stories about it. You can give a few hints, a few possibilities, but you would have to work with a specialist to unlock like your situation because there's too many variables. I think similarly with your book, there are so many variables. With a book about launching a book to get reviews and get revenue, there are less variables if that is the decided outcome, and there's a lot of other reasons to write a book. But I think it still positions you to have the right conversations with the right people. The question I have for you though, Angie, and I think Renee, this is your first book as well. How did you get past the inner voice? I've talked to so many authors who didn't move forward for a long time. It sounds like you had some space and time to think about this book over many years. But did you have anything holding you back? Was it just a matter of finding the right path forward? Like what happened internally? I mean, you now have a book. Like that's exciting, but you also had to get past something.
Yeah, and I didn't really have an inner voice, to be honest, but I think it's unfair to just say that because I think that I did. It just is something that I overcame and dealt with years and years ago in a different iteration and different version of quote unquote the book. Right. And we were talking in the green room before we came online that, a lot of people go like, author, speaker, coach in that order. And I went completely the opposite of like coach, speaker, author. And so being out there, being visible, creating content, being on stages desensitized me to some extent to putting a level of vulnerability out there that is in this book and people are surprised by. Mm-hmm. And so for me, the obstacle was really what is the common thread that and who am I trying to help with this book so that it had that connective tissue to bring it all together.
Renee, you already knew your content was going to be needed because you were writing content along the way. I mean, I think that's the beautiful part about creating a blog and having content people are interacting with, and then those early readers helping you kind of think of the framing. What was success in the early stages? Like, what did you think your book needed to have happen? And how long has it been since the book came out? And like, what do you think differently? Like, just give us a sense of that.
Right. Well, I will say, I mean, I think going back to that question of the challenge, one of the challenges was, oh my God, I got to put everything in this book. It needs to be the most brilliant book ever. And this is my like one chance. And so I think like it started to just feel so big. Right. Mm-hmm. And so at some point I was like, okay, I want to be an author. I think I have a lot of books in me. This is not my book this is a book. And so I just took I took kind of the barrier down a little bit, and it felt more doable. So, and then this other piece of getting this feedback, it's also like, I love, we do a lot of facilitation. We are in conversation with people all the time. It was a little bit lonely to just kind of sit in my office and write. And so starting to get that feedback, really helped me to see like, oh, wow, there's something here. And things that I actually thought were kind of obvious because I do them every day, but they're not as obvious to people who do this once every 5 years, right? I mean, that is the whole beginner's mind thing, right? And so that was really powerful. Like, okay, I just have to kind of just write down what's in my brain and then get some feedback and see where it lands. And there's enough here to be a book. So my book came out about a little more than 2 months ago. It's been super exciting. My goal is to get 1,000 copies out into the world, my first 1,000 copies, and then just kind of let it do its thing and hopefully create a recommendation loop around the book. So I'm on my way, maybe about a quarter of the way there, and just need to keep going. But I've already, I've been doing some speaking, some presenting, and it is I'm meeting some new people. I'm part of author communities, but I'm also meeting all kinds of nonprofit leaders all around the country.
Right.
Yeah. So
Thank you, Renee. Angie, when did your book come out?
4 months ago.
Wow. Okay.
January.
This is a very different
17th.
panel than some of the other panels I've had. And
Yeah.
that makes sense for why both of you read my book, because it came out in July of last year. And
There
it's
you go.
now in April as we're recording this. And so it was out for a little while. You had a chance to absorb it. Did anything change before and after you read that around what you thought were the goals? Like a lot of times, first-time authors tell me, like, I have to hit number one. That's what's so important to me. Like I'm gonna be a bestseller. I'm gonna sell 1 million copies. Like those sort of things. Angie, did anything shift for you about what you thought was going to be an important metric to measure as you were moving forward?
Not necessarily, but that isn't a bad thing or a dig on the book, because I was fortunate enough to work with a publishing coach who had already followed a similar framework, knows you, and knew
Wait, you
that's
want to
what we
name
were.
drop? Name drop.
Yeah, Kathy Sparrow, who I highly
Yes, love
recommend.
Kathy. Good job.
She has been a
I'm happy.
longtime friend and client and was the only choice when it was time to get some help with this, which, by the way, as a first-time author who now has my own small press, because that's a thing that we do, I never would have wanted to go at this alone, because I think that your book plus her knowledge really helped connect two parts of the process that, as somebody who prides myself on being able to figure out most things, I would not have wanted to figure out. And so what changed, I would say the thing that changed for me is I just had a nice checklist to work through. And now I have a nice checklist to work through again, because like Renee, a hashtag next book is totally a thing. Once you publish one, you're like, okay, I'm ready for the next one. But I think I'll try to make this baby breathe a little longer before I publish the next one.
Don't ask mom about the next baby until at least a year. Give it a chance. I want to just comment that my goal with that last book, that's my 4th book, was to change the conversation in the industry around what metrics were worth measuring. Strategy over vanity, always. And part of that was the BizBook Pub Hub has this curated directory of people in like publishing, whether it's writing, editing, publishing, launching, marketing, people who help you along that journey, Kathy Sparrow being one of those people. And so when I initially met with all these publishers, they had a bestseller campaign that they either sold themselves or they referred to. And every one of them privately said, I know it's BS, but it's what people want. And I'm like, in what other setting would the clients of the strategy, not the expert? Like, why don't we educate them? They're like, it's just really hard to get reviews. I'm like, I understand that, but like, that doesn't mean you don't give them the best chance at it. And so Kathy Sparrow telling you that information as she was working with you makes me really happy, because it's part of the effort that I'm trying to have. Like when Renee is talking about, getting 1,000 copies, for me, it's fundamentally changing the conversations that these hybrid publishers, assisted self-publishers are having with their authors. So you are already kind of coming into the process with a lot more education because of your connection to her. Renee, for you, were you already part of an author community before all this, or is this part of like a new expansion?
So I am part of an author community called Write Useful Books. And really love that book and framework. And it is about a lot about creating, getting the beta readers and creating a recommendation loop. However, I know, Robbie, you and I talked a little bit after my book launched, and maybe I could have talked to you before. I am still learning. And I think I was just so excited. And so I really did just, once I got the book, and I was on a little bit of a tight time frame, because I really wanted to get my book out in time for a conference, a facilitator conference that I was going to. And I didn't actually have a hard copy of it, but it was out in the world by that time. But everything it took longer than, that's a learning curve, man. And so in retrospect, perhaps I could have had more patience and just been a little bit slower in my launch and, collected my reviews. But, live and learn. Yeah.
Well, listen, your book's been out for 2 months. I'm going to give some metrics here. Your book, Renee, has 34 global ratings. That's the 1 through 5 stars. It's a 4.9 out of 5. It's a great book. And has 30 written reviews. So 30 of the 34 people left you a review, which honestly separates you from a lot of books that are out in the world. A lot of books published with less than 20. I will tell you, I'm not going to name names because I forgot his name, but I kind of want to say his name. But he pitched me a kind of smarmy, like, I should be in your podcast. The ending with like, so when do you want to book a time? Like, it really was that. Yeah, I know. Seriously, it was very over the top, Angie. And he has 2 books, and his overall rating is like 3.8 or something, like on both of his books. Like, it's not a well received book. The people who have 5 stars talk about either knowing him or have a same last name, and it was not a common name. And then the other people were like, you've seen this elsewhere. Maybe it's good for beginners. It's just like, anyways, it's not a new and profound book. And it only had a handful, like not even 10 written reviews. And he's hardcore pitching himself. And I'm like, man, like, like, first of all, write a quality book. Like, both of you took the time to write a book people actually need to hear. They needed to know about this information. You're building some community around it. Write a good book. I can't help you if your book's not solving a problem that people know they have. Like, that doesn't really work. But also the reviews, even 30, right? Anything over 20 means you made real effort. And since we're talking about this, I'll throw it out there. Angie, you've got 44 global ratings, 5 out of 5. Good job. And then 40 written reviews. So 40 of the 44 people. Both of you, what's clear to me from the percentages is that you had a reviews focused launch, because you just as easily could have had what that guy had, which was dozens, maybe 80 plus ratings and like 6 or 7 written reviews, most of which were not great. So
if you would like me to be the commercial, I did what you told me to do. Right? I did what the book told me to do. And here's the thing. I'm on Amazon. I did the hybrid deal. So I'm on Amazon, but I'm also in distribution and super excited. I'm doing like a book signing at Barnes & Noble here in a few weeks. And so we went the other route to be able to have widespread distribution as well. However, that
Ingram Spark.
Ingram Spark.
Yep.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Which, speaking of what takes forever getting books from them. However, the visibility and the credibility that the Amazon process provides to that has been really, really helpful to having bookstores say yes, getting some book signings and doing some of that kind of like more traditional authory stuff that we all think about. So yes, I just followed the checklist, Robbie.
Yeah, because the Barnes & Noble people aren't going to book time for you to come in and talk about a book that's not going to draw anyone into their store. And while they don't want anyone buying from Amazon, they also look at Amazon to validate that people want your book. So it's a funny thing that like this, it's just such a love 'em or hate 'em. Like, Amazon for independent authors is just like the place you've got to start. I'm curious about the Kindle flash sale, how it fits in with your overall marketing. Renee, this timing could not have been any better for you. You had the book come out, you had time. Both of you actually had you've built up the time, the runway to get the reviews, and then you get to have a little lull, and then the flash sale happened and you were able to re-spark interest. So Renee, how did all that tie together for you as you were thinking about your launch?
Yeah, I think it was great to be part of the Kindle flash sale. One of the points, we just did this debrief conversation a few days ago, and somebody made the point that, these are people who many of them are also working on organizational change, as I am, and we are sharing audiences, and we're borrowing each other's audiences. And that was, for me, the most powerful part of it. I get to, connect with Angie's audience and with Robbie's audience and vice versa. And so, I felt like it really did push my book sales up for a few days, and also just, it's like, as the author, I want to keep talking about my book. But on the other hand, it's like, oh my gosh, the book again, so it's just like another angle that I got to share with people. So I thought it was really fun and definitely sold a lot of books. It was really cool.
That's awesome. Angie, what were your thoughts on it?
Well, my thoughts were I'm excited for July because I will not also be at a conference where I am the closing keynote speaker during the same week, which I did not realize when, I signed up for it all. But I literally am going to do it again right before I signed up for the next one, because it was also nice to kind of get my bearings in doing one of these. And as somebody who's kind of a natural marketer anyway, I now know how to just take this to the whole next level and leverage the visibility, the connections with other authors. Like Renee said, for me, I love connecting and being in community with other people that are doing really big, important things. And this definitely feels like it plugged into that. Even, doing a live with a few authors was great to kind of get to know them and see that there were like people doing parallel stuff. And it's like, okay, cool. I'm not in my own little echo chamber anymore. And for me, that was really fun. And I definitely, even with, I would say, less than I would have liked, not minimal, less than I would have liked, posting and engagement, I definitely saw a bump in book sales over the last week, and it actually still trickling in. So, hey.
Yeah, it's still trickling in. It's a long tail, that marketing push. It's a 4-day campaign for those who are listening. We lower our books to 99 cents, or if they're over a certain size, maybe they're $1.99. And we just cross promote across our networks. And a lot of what Renee just said, it's like the overlap of our audiences is really the key here. So it's not just the effort that Angie did, it's the effort that Renee did and that I did, and collectively we pushed this out. And we have some heavy hitters among us who have big lists, but we also have people who don't have the biggest lists, but they have a network. And so some people were really this is the part that I love this time, is people who took the time to say, okay, let's see, Renee's book's about nonprofit leaders. Let me think who I know, and like send them a note saying, here's a book I particularly think would be helpful for you. Oh, by the way, it's part of a list of 50 plus books. Oh, Angie's book, let me think of all the career people I know, right? So like that kind of personalized outreach, you don't have to have the most enormous list to have that impact. Renee, what would you like to add?
I just wanted to mention, now when I go on Amazon, it says people who bought this book also bought, there's all my friends from the Kindle
But it's
flash
good
sale.
because, unlike the downside to selling to our
gosh.
family and friends, which is what a lot of authors default to, is that that like also bought ends up showing up for romance readers or mystery readers, or people who look at World War II history or whatever, like whatever the genre is that they, and there's no no like rebound effect where people are like, oh, look, there's another thing on my topic, or there's another book that's adjacent, or something of interest to me I would have never seen before. Whereas all of our books are, there's like a group of leadership books and a business communications books. And so it's personal transformation. So it's the further effects. This is my 7th one. There's so much to learn from running them. And we are having another one in July, and then we'll have one around Cyber Monday. So they happen 3 times a year. Folks who are listening can go to kindleflashsale.com to find out what's going on and get on the wait list if you don't have the book that's ready, or sign up for the next one. Beyond doing the Kindle Flash Sale, Angie, how did you get your book out? Like, whether for free or getting paid, like, are you tying it to part of bulk orders when you're speaking or coaching? Like, how are you getting the book distributed?
Yeah, so we started by launching to a pretty good engaged list that we have. Not that they did the 1,000 clicks. Holy cow! We had some people in the flash sale who had amazing results in that department. But yeah, we definitely went to the list, and I'm using it as kind of a brand enhancer. So tying it to speaking gigs, it goes out to every single client who comes on board. And then like I mentioned, I'm doing some of that like good old fun author promo of some book signings. And, I did a good old boots on the ground, go out around town and visit every single bookstore and ask them to carry my book. And you'd be surprised how supportive bookstores are of wanting to carry local authors. I also live in like a funky little place that wants to support somebody who's an author, who lives here. But, I really have no boundaries when it comes to shameless self-promotion. And so I'll just go everywhere and anywhere because I want it to be in as many hands as possible.
I would argue that it's not self-promotion then, that it's not actually about you at all. And that's why people get so stuck on this. It's that you have a deep belief in the value of what you've created, and that will not benefit people unless they know about it, read it, and take action from it, and maybe have a conversation with you afterwards if they are feeling stuck about what to do next. And so if you don't put yourself out of the way and let the value do the talking, then no one gets to read about it. In fact, Renee, you and I have a background in nonprofit fundraising in particular, and there's a phrase in the world of fundraising, if you're afraid to ask, kick yourself out of the way and let the cause do the talking. And I think that similarly, we got to do something here. Like, if you make it about your own angst, like, think about the value of what you just said, Angie. You went to a local independent bookstore and said, hi, I'm a local author. Would you carry my book? What are they going to say? No, we don't like local authors. Go away.
But
Maybe
if
they'll
you
buy just
don't
one copy.
ask, the answer's no. And I completely agree that if you believe, and I think this is true, whether it's a book, whether it's a service or whatever it is, what you titled today's event has some inkling of this idea that like we all have a story and a message to put out there. Who are you to keep it from someone? It's almost unfair, right? So that's why I say semi shameless self-promotion, because I actually don't believe that's what it is. It is making sure the resources that people need are available to them. And that's what we do in our books.
Renee, you have said earlier that you're about a quarter of the way to selling or distributing 1,000 copies. In an average first year of sales for an independently published book, not through one of the traditional publishers, they sell between up to 100, up to 250. So sort of in a range of 100 to 250.
Wow.
What you have to know about the 100 to 250 range is that that includes books like Exactly What to Say by Phil M. Jones, which has sold millions. So you have some books that are breakout successes that are selling millions, and you have most books selling 2 copies, one for themselves, one for their mom. So that's like a ton of books are not selling more than 5 copies. So you selling like about 250 books in the time of 2 months, it's like, great job. So tell me a little bit more about how you've moved copies and beyond individual book sales. Have you managed to think of any bulk order options or connect with associations or membership communities, etc.?
Yeah. So some of the things that I've been doing, I've been on a couple of podcasts talking about the book. So there's a lot of, number of podcasts that are, connected with people in the nonprofit sector. So getting on those podcasts and talking about the book. And every time the podcast comes out, I see some books being purchased. So it does seem to be, it works. In addition, I went to a local community event. I had a table and I had, I was able to talk to people about the book and about our work. And it's just, it is like, I'm both trying to sell copies, but it's also a way to start to, to open up conversations about our consulting work, which is really the thing that I'm trying to do.
Right. It's about what comes next. And this is why writing a book that has a clear next step is so important. It guides people into that conversation. It serves multiple purposes. I think of it as a brick that's not just sitting there, but it's actually propping open the door between you and the prospect or you and the referral partner. And so that conversation can keep happening. As we wrap up here, I'm wondering, Renee, do you have any advice that you would give someone who is writing a book tied to a business like you did? Like there's more work to be done. It's not just about reading the book. So what would you share with that kind of writer or author?
Yeah, I think it's interesting since people have actually come up to me and said, "Oh, I'm thinking about writing a book," and I would just say, so first of all, go for it, but also know it will take some time. And I think it is important to be strategic about, okay, as people read, it's not just about getting the book out into the world. It's actually about, what happens next. So I talked to someone who has an excellent book and I said to her, well, are you seeing a boost in your business? And she said, well, this isn't really connected to the thing I'm doing. I'm like, wait a minute, why'd you write the book then? It was maybe therapy for her to get this book out there. But I think I knew that this was something that I could keep talking about for another 5 years or 10 years or whatever, because it's a really rich topic. And it really, it's about the work we do, the people we work with, the challenges that are coming up. It's never going to get boring for me. So yeah, I think just thinking about what's going to happen after that book goes into the world.
I love that this is now the thing you're sharing with other authors, and that you're as skeptical as I am about people who publish books with no next step. You're like, what happened? It's so much effort to not have it lead somewhere. It's sort of like, oh, really? What happened there? So I'm trying to catch people earlier and earlier. Part of why I have these conversations is to try to catch people before the book's been published, so they can think, oh, wait, where is it going next? Because they're so tired at that point. They just want to hit publish and be done with it. Angie, what about you? What advice would you give to someone who's writing a book to grow their business?
Everyone is thinking about writing a book, and only 5 to 7% of the population actually does it.
Yeah, even less
So
probably. Yeah.
it's probably less. If you are thinking about writing a book connected to your business, to me, it's really about like, what do you stand for and how can that book support it? Whether it is directly through, I'm going to say, the work, like Renee's book, aligning with the kind of the service line. For me, it was more about who am I in the work that I do, but I still know how that ties back to the business and how I want it to support and enhance the brand. There has to be some level of clarity and focus in the book you're writing, which is why it took me 5 years to actually put it out there, because I lacked that clarity and that focus and the connection to how I wanted it to perform in my business.
I'm glad you took the time though, because like just the outcome is so much better because of it. You know, I think that it's hard. It's hard when you're a first time author to slow down. I talked to someone today who says they met me at an event 2 years ago, and they did all this work on their book, and then they just kind of like they reached a point where they were just so sick of their book, and I was like, oh, it means it's almost done. And she's like, I needed a break, and then I knew I could have published it, but I just needed a break because I remember you saying like it had to have a plan, and I didn't have one, and I was too tired. And so she got caught up in life stuff, and then she was able to come back to it. She actually revamped the book quite a bit because of that space, because of that leaving space, and the conversations that she had changed the book. Now she's got a book where beta readers are telling her it's like it's the right book. Now she's able to move forward. It's so hard to take that step back when I've talked to people who've written 30,000 words and then like, this isn't the right book. Like that's a really hard thing to do. But I know that it's a lot to write 30,000 words, but there's so much after. Like no one who's writing for the first time realizes how much there is to do after you say, I have a book and I'm going to publish it. I'm going to market. I love that, Renee, you're like, I'm going to talk about this book for 5 or 10 years. Like that's fantastic. Like I bought this fancy podcast microphone in 2015 and I'm still using it 11 years later. That's the kind of investment I want to have for a book. Like this was an incredibly expensive piece of equipment at a time when I had no money in my business, but it was me saying like, I'm going to be doing this for like the next decade. And here I am over 10 years later. Like that's the kind of forethought you need to have and commitment, because the book is, whatever expense this podcast mic was, the book is like a lot more than that. So I'm just
writing it is the easiest part.
Oh, it's so hard to admit that because I didn't like the writing part at all, but it is the easiest part. I loved all the stuff that came after, which is probably why I do what I do today, Angie. But yes, it is, as hard as it is the easier of all the things. Like it's a triathlon. There's the swim, there's the biking while sopping wet, and then there's the run. And like the swim is getting the content out of your head into something people can interact with. And then the biking is the publishing, right? All the formatting and design and cover choices and all of those things. You still got to run at the end. And so many of us are only training for one part of that race. We're not going to have a very good experience at the end of that. So that's my other metaphor. There you go. Angie, Renee, how can people find you and follow your work? Angie, let's start with you. How can people find you and connect with you after this call?
AngieCallen.com.
Fantastic. I'll put all these links, by the way, at bizbookpubhub.com. And how about you? How can people find you, Renee?
Right. We are at therosscollective.com. And we have an e-list that goes out every 2 weeks. So subscribe.
I'm also going to include links to your LinkedIn, to your books. Make sure people can find your website. All that's going to be at bizbookpubhub.com. You're also going to find all the show notes for the past episodes. We have over 500 shows at this point, so you can go check all that out at bizbookpubhub.com. There's also a curated directory of experts like Kathy Sparrow, like myself, who will help you wherever you are on your author journey: writing, editing, publishing, launching, and marketing, free virtual networking events, a blog, and the Kindle flash sales. So much good content for entrepreneurial authors. Definitely check it out. Panel, thank you so much for being here. Really appreciate your insights. Cheers, everyone.
Thank you, Robbie. Such a great conversation.